Welcome to the Business of Pharmacy podcast, where we explore the business of pharmacy through candid, in-depth conversations with the industry's top leaders. Every Monday, tune in for insights and stories you won't find anywhere else. I'm your host, Mike Koelzer. Hey listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about MatchRx, who is sponsoring this episode. I've been with MatchRx for probably a dozen years. You're likely familiar with them, but for those of you that may not be, MatchRx is the online marketplace where independent pharmacies can buy and sell overstock prescription meds. There's over 7,000 pharmacies, including mine, in this vibrant community. You can manage everything easily with their website and mobile app. And if you need any help, they'll train you in under 5 minutes. It's fast, simple, and reliable. And MatchRx is fully DSCSA compliant, so you can trust it. I use MatchRx for my inventory needs, and I'd recommend you use them too. Visit MatchRx.com today and tell them I sent you. Shane, for those that haven't come across you online, introduce yourself to our listeners.
I'm Shane Reeves. I've been a pharmacist for 30 years, and so was my dad and his dad. We've been practicing pharmacy for 125 years almost in Middle Tennessee. Really have pivoted from being a pharmacist in recent years and really function more in a CEO role of my business and do a variety of things in that space. And I lost my mind in 2017 and ran for the Tennessee State Senate and won.
Congratulations.
So because of that, it's given me an opportunity to have a voice at the table in Nashville in regards to business and banking and insurance and pharmacy and healthcare. And it's been a lot of fun.
Shane, I got to tell our listeners that you and I tried this about a month ago, and we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. And you said, hey, Mike, we can either do it now with, I forget, maybe the video wasn't working or something, as we wanted to see each other while we were talking. You said either we can do it now or we can reschedule. And I said, Shane, I really want to see you when I'm talking to you. I said, let's reschedule. I know when somebody is organized, when all of the next steps get done in the 20 seconds while we're talking. So it's, all right, Mike, I'm going to send you an email and we're going to copy our marketing person and also our whatever. They'll get back to you on this, and I'm going to tell so-and-so to do that. That kind of practice is always fascinating to me. And it's let me do the things I want to do. I always say it doesn't necessarily let me get a lot more things done, but it allows me the free time for my mind to experiment and to have fun with things without thinking I have dropped something. So I know, looking at the size of your business and what you've done with your social leadership and also in the political scene now, that you're an organized guy.
Absolutely. I would have drowned many years ago if I had not had systems in place for organization. I would say first and most importantly, I have a lot of very talented people around me. I have an executive assistant in Nashville that runs my political office, and I have an executive assistant in Murfreesboro in my pharmacy offices. So the two of those work together to manage everything from a time perspective. The second thing is I'm 56 years old, and I've learned over time what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So I really gravitate toward focusing on the things where I can add the most value. And if I'm not good at it, or if I really am having to work too hard to put something together, I have no problem delegating. And I think the third aspect of that, between good people and knowing what my gifts are, or lack of gifts are, is systems. I have got significant systems in how I manage my time, my scheduling, how I manage my communications via email or text, and how I manage my mind, really where I invest my time. I always say it's my time, my mind, my money, where I put those things. And it has served me incredibly well because I just follow the process, just follow the systems over and over again. And to the point, I speak to groups sometime on the top 10 things I do for productivity.
Well, guess what, Shane? Guess what we're going to talk about today. When did you realize that importance of that planning, the organization, and to get things in the right spot? Let me tell you mine. My dad, he'd be home like on a Sunday, and he'd have crap all over the kitchen table, all of his papers and all that kind of stuff. He'd be watching the golf game. And I kind of made a promise to myself, I guess. I said, I can't do it that way. I've got to start organizing from the very start. So I probably started in early college knowing the importance of that. And now, here's the thing, though. I ran into my dad's friend years ago, and I told him this same story. We were talking about something like this. And he said, Mike, do you really think your dad was that disorganized with all the stuff he did? He said that was a show in order for him to sit there and watch the golf game and make it look like he was doing something important. So,
Right.
When did you realize the importance of this pathway in order to do the things you've done? Was there an impetus behind it, or did you just kind of know you had to get things in the right order to move forward in a particular advanced way?
That's a great question. And I don't think I've ever had it asked exactly like that before. But when I graduated pharmacy school when I was 26 years of age, moved back home, bought into the family business. After I had been working for about 4 years with a former business partner of mine, I was working night and day. I had just gotten married. I was primarily a retail pharmacist back there in those early years. And we were open 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 Saturdays, and 1 to 5 Sundays. So it was routine for me to work 5 days, a weekend, and 5 more days. So I would work 12 days in a row.
I just mentioned that to my family yesterday, back in the old days at the pharmacy.
So I did that for a number of years. I had a new marriage, never had vacations. And I hit a wall after about 1999, 2000, when I was getting close to 30 years of age, and said, I'm working too hard. I'm not making enough money. I don't really feel like I'm leaning into my gifts enough. And it was about that period of time that somebody said, have you ever thought about getting some professional coaching? I'd never gotten coaching before. And they said, we don't really think you need to get coaching from a pharmacy perspective. You ought to get some business, some strategic coaching. So I actually joined a program called The Strategic Coach.
Really?
I was 30 years old, and I went to Atlanta for this coaching program. This was many years ago in my life. And the promise of the program was 3 things. One is they said, we're going to teach you the entrepreneurial time system. We're going to teach you how to manage your time. Buffer days, focus days, free days, how to really manage your time on a quarterly basis. The second promise of the program was we're going to teach you how to make more money, how to really focus on leveraging your relationships and how to use just the power, how to make more money for what you're doing. But the third aspect of this, Mike, was we're going to spend a considerable amount of time really helping you to hone in on your unique abilities, your capabilities, your gifts. And I went through about 2 years of really taking a step back. I went through every possible testing you could go through. And from that testing, I identified a handful of things that I'm just incompetent at. I'm a terrible handyman. I couldn't put my children's Christmas toys together. I made a list of things that I was competent at, which I could do, but not that good at. Accounting, spreadsheets. I can do it. Banking, but I'm not the best. One more step to the things I was excellent at, but I still had to work at, things like public speaking, communicating, but then the things that were truly my unique ability. And my unique ability is around strategy and organization. That's what I'm uniquely good at. So I was about 30. I did that program for 4 or 5 years. And since that period of time, I have organized my life around leaning into that gift, really trying to help using strategy, using organization, really managing my time in the areas that I can make the biggest difference in the world, where I invest my money, where I invest my influence. So if I'm going to speak to a group, I spoke to a group of 300 home care nurses this morning. I'm going to speak to a group. It really kind of needs to fit into my wheelhouse. I got asked to speak to a group here in about 3 weeks on artificial intelligence. That's not my gift. And I said, I'm not your guy. So stand in your lane. So it was about that period of time in my life where I really determined what I was good at. So from that, I have developed so many systems on scheduling, communications, task management, delegation, meeting rhythms, just a variety of things that work for me. So I'm able to really have a fairly large bandwidth to manage a lot.
Well, and the fact is, Shane, you would not have had the time or the ability to dedicate time to your job, your church, your politics, whatever's going to come next, those would have been good ideas in your life and maybe never happened. Or, like we see, unfortunately, could happen to any of us, they very well could have been, I'm now this, but I don't have relationships with my children. Or I'm now into this politics, but I've just decided that I like more time with my secretary than I do with my wife back at home, those kind of things. And sometimes that's from time. I know it's also from wrapping up too much of your identity in some of these things. But without what you went through, that time figuring, I know for me, like with this show and with my family and those kind of things, it would be an idea that I hope to do someday, but never could imagine how it could happen.
I don't know who said this quote, so I'm going to probably botch it. But I heard this somewhere along the way, and it really applies to where my life has been and is now. But I don't think I'm afraid anymore of failure in my life. If I died next week, I've accomplished a lot, and I'm thankful to God for the things I've been able to do in my life. I'm really not worried anymore about failure. What I am worried about is succeeding in things in life that really might not matter. And what I mean by that is this. I could be the most successful CEO in the world, but if I lose my marriage, is it worth it? I could become a senator. I could become a governor of Tennessee. But ultimately, if I completely lose my health where I can't function, what am I doing? I could become a millionaire. I could become a billionaire in finances. But if I lose my walk with God or I lose my children, what am I doing? So really trying to make sure that I'm succeeding in things in life that really matter first. And these other areas are important. I certainly don't have it all figured out, but I do really try to step back and reflect to make sure that I don't lose tension on the areas of my life that are really a bigger deal than being a senator and a CEO and a pharmacist.
I'm always watching these detective shows on TV, and maybe it's just part of the genre of that or the movie cliches, but it's always that the marriages have broken down for these detectives because they're on the case the whole time, that kind of thing. And I've always thought that about my job and what I do, where does the tension help relationships because you're in something together? Not that my wife's in the pharmacy, but you're talking about and you're kind of moving forward. Or has that taken you away from that? I don't know what I would necessarily do if all of a sudden I'm not at this stage, but years ago, if somehow I got into something and I'm rising up the ranks, and I don't know if I'd have the wherewithal to stop that and say, this is hurting my relationship. I'd like to think I would, but I don't know. Maybe some people get caught up in it, and before they look at it, it's too late.
When I'm speaking to young people nowadays, I've quit completely using the term of work-life balance. Just because to me, balance means you somehow are applying equal pressure to everything at any given time. This is not how it works. You have to surge sometimes in certain areas if you want to get something done. If I want to run a half marathon, which I don't, but I have in the past, it's going to require a little extra surge from me physically for a month or two to train. If I wanted to be a state senator, which I am, it was going to require me for the first 90 days of the year to surge, really surge. And I do for the first 90 days of the year. The rest of the year as a senator, I do what I have to do, but I'm primarily focused on my business. But that's why I really like the word tension, because you got to keep a little tension on everything. You can't completely lose your kids in the process as you're working through things, but it does require sometimes to really be successful to push harder in some areas. But balance to me is just, it's not possible.
Shane, I have my own personal ways. When you have a day or a few days that just got shot to hell, all of a sudden you get a call and you've now got to fly out and you've got 3 meetings you've got to cancel and this and that, or some major thing came up, some security thing or something with the business. What methods do you have in place then to get back on track from those days? Because I think that's what happened to a lot of people. They just get thrown off stuff and then there goes their diet in their meetings, and then they're afraid that people now think they're not responsible because they miss this and that. What is your method then to get back on once you have one of those kind of days or weeks?
A couple of things come to mind. The first one is before I start my day every day at 8 o'clock, I like to say I slay the three-headed dragon before I come to work. So I'm up at 5 o'clock every day. I'm a morning person. I've always been a morning person. So I get up in the morning at 5 o'clock and I try to do something physical, something spiritual, and something intellectual between 5 o'clock and 6:30. That might be some quiet time, devotional time, prayer time. It might be going on a 30-minute walk. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. So usually if I can slay those three-headed dragon by the time I go to work, I'm filling myself up, because there's no way I can fill everyone else up if I'm not feeding myself. So how you start your day is a big deal. The second thing is, and this may not be for everyone in your audience, but I do control a lot where my schedule is going to be. I mean, I can control, not all of it. You're going to have crisis. You're going to have my wife's going to have a tire blowout on the interstate, and I'm going to have issues. But majority of the time, I control my schedule. So I'll give you an example. When I'm not in Nashville as a senator, and I'm back working full time from May to December in my business, I created a concept called Tennessee Thursdays. Tennessee Thursdays are specifically designed for Senate, all things Senate. So when I run into anybody, any place, anywhere, I will give them one of my business cards and I will say, listen, this morning I had a nurse want to talk to me specifically about an Alzheimer related issue. And I said, you need to go on my website, or you need to call my office, and you need to schedule some time on a Tennessee Thursday. So on Thursdays, I may have 15 meetings back to back to back. But if it's not a Thursday, I just don't have external meetings. Now, if I have to go to a ribbon cutting, or like tonight I'm speaking to a group of farmers, some of those things happen. But driving meetings, driving the people you want to meet with into a certain bucket makes a lot of sense. So even within my company, 12 Stone, I have certain days I only do certain things within my business. So it really helps me to drive themes. There's a lot of synergy that builds on each other. I scheduled no meetings till Monday mornings up through noon. I have nothing on Monday mornings through noon. And I have nothing on Fridays afternoon, ever. So I have bookends on both sides. So I can prepare and I can recover on both sides of the week. And let's just be honest, if I'm overwhelmed, I can't catch up at all. I have to do some work on the weekends. But I really try to get it done through the week, so my weekends are more free days to reset myself.
Do the attendees of that meeting, do they know, I know they know the 15, but do they have any kind of a instruction before they come in, like, hey, you don't want to spend 8 minutes on this because we're going to make this a 15-minute meeting? What kind of instruction might they get before those?
They don't normally give a lot of instruction, but when they first sit down, I will say, well, listen, I want to make sure we're making valuable use of your time. And now that I've met you, let's get right into it. What do you want to talk about today? So, I go right at it because I do want to make sure they could spend 10 minutes talking to me about their history in Tennessee, and then the last 5 minutes talking about their child who's disabled that needs help from our Medicaid program. So I say, let's get right into it.
I had a lady just this morning. I was in the store. She says, can I talk to you in your office? So I have a little side office. So she came in and I get halfway in the office. I only have one chair. So I get halfway in. She's kind of straddling the door still. But you got to be careful of these old ladies with their purses. Once that purse goes down and they sit, and that's me now that I'm an old fart. I like to sit. But once I sit down and the purse goes down, I mean, you're 6-7 minutes into it. And then by the time you wrap it up, then I think they call it the Midwestern goodbye. Then it's about a 6 or 7 minute goodbye. And you can spend the whole meeting in that. So that's important to have that time frame on it.
No question about it. No question about it. And I'm doing them a disservice if they come in and they do too much of that. And then the last minute, I have to say, I'm sorry, our time is over, because my assistant will come in and say, Senator Reeves, you have 1 minute. And they will say to me, I've got 1 minute left. So I learned early on to say, and every now and then my assistant will have a signal and I'll just say, give me 2 more minutes. But if I do that too many times, then I'm backing up other people.
And it's not that you need to. We're all allowed to have our boundaries, but it kind of helps to have the assistant come in because then, not that you're looking for this, I'm tongue in cheek, but then she's the bad guy. You're like, oh, I'd love to sit and chat all day, but Sally says it's time to move on kind of thing.
That happens. That happens. And what I'll typically say is, if we did not accomplish everything that you wanted to do today, go back through the process, talk to them again, schedule another Tennessee Thursday. In the next few weeks, we'll talk some more. It works that way, and it really helps people to get to the point. But that has really served me well. Again, batching tasks on those Thursdays for Senate has really helped me a lot. Something new I've also started, since if you really want to get kind of crazy on me, if somebody really is pushing me and they want more time, if it's somebody I do want to give a lengthier period of time to, I'll ask them 3 mornings a week. I go for a walk or a run. I'll ask them to join me on that. I say, meet me at 6:30 a.m. at this park, and we're going to go on a walk run for 3 miles. You talk to me then.
Really?
Yes.
People take you up on it?
Occasionally. Again, I would probably give that I wouldn't give it to the little lady with the bag. But if somebody really said, I really just need some of your time to talk about something, I'd say, well, I'm going to be at this park this Thursday morning at 6:30, and it's about a 3-mile loop, and I'm going to walk a little, run a little once you meet me, and we will.
You're better than me, Shane. I would give that to the little old lady. I'd say you come and hop on the stationary bike with me. She'd be like, there's only one seat, and I'm like, well, that's your problem. What's your bedtime with the 5 a.m. wake time?
I have a big brown chair in my living room that my wife says is the other woman in my life. And I do not get in that chair until it's time to go to sleep.
Yeah, right.
So I'll get up and walk around the living room and say, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else of substance? Because when I get in this chair, it's over. And so normally I'm in that chair by 8:30, and I'd say the next 30 minutes to an hour, I'm done. And then I'll wake up an hour or so later and go to bed.
One of the things in my personal system is it's rarely that I think of something and do it that's not on my list. Because I find if I don't do it the next day, my day's bouncing around. And I'm not saying putting out fires, even fun stuff. Like my wife said, hey, the seat on our kayak at the cottage broke. It'd be cool to get a new one of those. And I said, are you going to look it up or do you want me to look it up? She said, go ahead and look it up. I said, okay. So I get out my to-doist and I say kayak and I put it for tomorrow. Because that would have been something that I would have spent 20 minutes on right at that point. Is it terrible? No, but I didn't wake up in the morning saying my goal this morning is to do the kayak seat. And so almost all that stuff goes on the next day. And I might have 30 of those, but then I can decide when really the best time would be to do something like that.
I see the books behind your desk. And you see the books back here on my wall as well. I mean, I've read lots and lots of books, and there's truly is nothing new under the sun. I mean, Stephen Covey really did have a pretty good idea on his old time quadrants, making sure that you're spending time on things that are non-urgent, but they're important.
Yep.
And that's things like exercise, quiet time, planning, strategy, dinner with your wife. Those are things that are important, but they're not urgent. Because if you spend all your time in those urgent areas that are not important, I mean, you're just not going to be productive and you're not going to be pleased with your week. But no matter who you are, whether you are a brand new student out of school or whether you're the governor of Tennessee, everyone has some say-so on how they're spending their time and where you're spending your mind. If you're just doing 20 hours a week of Netflix streaming, knock yourself out, but you're choosing to put your head into that. So you have control over those things.
I think one of the universal problems that I've come across, and I think many people have when I hear them talk about meetings and things like that, is not having that next action step. Who's going to do what? When is it going to happen? Things don't leave meetings, unless they have to, they don't leave a meeting as a good idea someone should do. And I imagine your executive assistant, that's one of his or her tasks, I imagine, to make sure that we know who's going to do it and when they're going to do it and how it's going to report back and so on. Because if not, you're back there next month talking about the same damn things.
That's it. Well, and also, again, when I start the year with my assistant, 4 times a year, I have an all-staff meeting. It's with company. I just had one last week. Every month, I'll have a meeting with what I call my leadership team of directors. That's about 40 people. Every week, I have a meeting with my C-suite. I've got 5 guys on just my C-suite, and those are structured. And because of the way I've got those things laid out, it helps me to be intentional about what that agenda is going to look like. And if there's no need for us to get together, I don't have any desire to get in a room and just rehash the same things over and over again. There needs to be some idea of what we're trying to do, something operationally, something strategy, something clinical, something political. Where are we going with things? And then ultimately, like you said, trying to leave there and saying, okay, you work on that, and I got these 2 things.
Technology-wise, Shane, are you doing a lot of that video? Has a lot of that changed since COVID, or what's the status on that?
We use Microsoft Teams for everything inside the business. It's just remarkable how much, obviously this is a big part of your life too now, but it's just remarkable how much that's changed the aspect of my life professionally. Nowadays, I routinely have 6 to 8 meetings every week. The Tennessee Thursday people, they can choose to do a Teams meeting. If they don't want to meet with me in person, they can just jump in. And my assistant's saying, just bringing people in either live by Teams or in person. They can do that. This past week, my weekly C-suite meeting, all 5 of us were in different locations. And we all just dialed in and talked for 30 minutes just to do a catch-up. So I don't know what we would do without it.
COVID put that a few years in advance, I imagine. Before that, it's maybe, I'm sorry, but this just is going to work best to do. There's really no apologies.
For every industry I know of, everybody, it's more than just healthcare or politics. I mean, it's everyone. Just the amount of telehealth that's going on in my state today.
Absolutely.
Compared to 2018-19 is 100-fold.
Absolutely.
That makes a difference. People that want to meet with me from a business perspective, if it's an investor in my company and they live in Chicago or Boston or whatever, I'll do this real quickly, 15 minutes, and we'll talk. Because if we had to wait for us to get on the same calendar, it could be a month as far as face-to-face. So I think it's sped up. I think it's just sped everyone's lives up, but it's also made things so much easier.
Is that all pretty much wrapped into the Microsoft Teams, or do you feel you have to go outside of that?
Well, let me speak to this first, which has been a big deal for me. Then I can comment on the task. I find that when people are calling my office, leaving me voicemails, they're calling my cell phone, leaving me voicemails, they're sending me text. When people are trying to communicate with you in so many different ways, it really slows you down. So 100% of if every single person that calls me, if you call my cell phone, you call my office, you call my executive, I direct everyone to email. Everybody goes to email. And those emails come into me. If it's a business email, it goes to my executive assistant that does my business. If it's a political email, it goes to my executive assistant in Nashville that does my politics. And those two will collaborate and then plug people into the appropriate buckets as far as scheduling is concerned. And because I've been doing this a while, I typically know what the top 5 reasons are that people call me. They want a job. They want me to give money to something. They want me to public speak. They're a vendor wanting me to buy something. There's somebody wanting me to have lunch and mentor them. It's just a variety. So because of that, we kind of have canned ways we handle all of those as far as those pieces. Now, as far as how I manage my task, your audience can't see this, but I created my own tool that really helps me every single week. I told you about that Friday afternoon. Every single Friday, I'll reset my task. What are the most important things I need to work on next week? What are the handful of things that must be done, I'd like to do, etc. So that's constantly refreshing, constantly to try to make sure I'm focusing on the most important things to do for this week. So right now, the 7 things I have to get done this week are over here to the left side of my desk.
Is that electronic, Shane, or paper?
It's just paper. I write it down. Yeah, my specific form that I use, I have a section for 12 Stone, my business, things I've got to focus on. I have a section for Senate, things I have to focus on. I have a section for personal, areas of personal things in my life, fixing the kayak seat, things that are in the personal area. I have a financial section, things financially that are important for me to get done. I have a section specifically that has my executive assistant in Nashville's name on it, things she needs to be working on. I have an executive assistant from my Murfreesboro group that she needs to be working on. And the things at the bottom are just the ongoing perhaps, things I need to keep in the hopper to work on in the future. And every week I've marked off, I clean it, I start over again. I do that every Friday afternoon.
My section of those, I've got a no date section that if my mind sees it, it's like an idea. I'll put it down there. It's not gone, but I'm not doing it right now. And I'm going through there, and more often than not, I'm deleting the things off of there. So that wasn't a good idea. I don't need to do that. That's past, those kind of things. But it's a kind of a gift to ourselves to not just have to make that decision at the moment. It's like, I don't need to decide if I'm going to try to land on the moon. I'll put it on my list, and more than likely I'll cross it off, but at least it's somewhere.
There's something just therapeutic about scratching those off every week and adding new things to it, moving forward. I mentioned to you, I'm 56 years old, and I can't imagine there's ever going to be a season of my life where I have more going on than I do right this second. If so, I can't imagine it right now, what it could look like between family and business and politics and everything that is that's going on. But I have really been thinking lately about the next season that is in front of me when I'm not a CEO and I'm not a senator and I'm not doing business and pharmacy podcasts because nobody would care what I'm saying. And what does that life look like for me? Because that's going to be a cliff in my world, because I'm a busy person, a productive person, and I get tired, I get burned out like everybody else does. But I do know that once I've had about 6 months off, I'm probably driving my wife and everybody crazy. So what is that fourth quarter of my life look like? Go from 60 to 80. What is that going to look like physically, spiritually, financially, purpose, the big areas of my life? Just kind of be designing those things now, vocationally, avocationally. So I've really started working on that. So you do this again with me in 5 years, and I'll tell you what that plan is.
That's right. That's important to do. And I've heard it and I've said it here before. Someone told me, they said, don't just look out in your future in some nebulous way. It's like, pick somebody that you maybe admire, maybe not, but pick somebody that you can balance your thoughts up against. It's like, wait, what are they doing at 9:15 on Wednesday morning? Instead of saying, I'm going to live somewhere or I'm going to be somewhere, it's like, well, what am I going to be doing at 9:15 on a Wednesday morning if I was in that position? Because that's life. I mean, that's the stuff that's going to hit you every day.
President George W. Bush was in Murfreesboro 2 weeks ago at a big private school event that I went to. And he got asked a question specifically about managing time. And he talked about how early on in his career, when he was in his 30s, he always had an addictive personality, drank too much, he smoked too much. And somebody had suggested to him that he needed, I think it might have been his wife, that said, you've got to develop some healthy habits. So he took up jogging when he was like 39 years of age. And he not only would jog, but he would jog at 11 o'clock every single day. So he has a chapter in his book called It's 11 a.m., I Must Be Jogging. And the point being to what we're talking about, which is it helps to have those keystone habits that are non-negotiables in your life that you're going to do over and over again at that season to build the rest of your life around. Because if you're going to run 11 o'clock every day, do you really want to come back and smoke a cigarette? Probably not. So it leads to other areas. So I think developing some of those make a big difference. And if you look at people out there in their 80s, if you lose your health, if you lose your friends, if you lose purpose, you lose a handful of things, you don't want to live anymore. So do what you can to protect those handful of things that are important. And hopefully, even when you do die, whatever situation you're in, you've at least died in such a way that you felt like you died still making a difference.
Personally, my listeners have heard this, but my personal hobby is sight reading at piano music. It's something I started years ago. In the last 5 years, I've really been dedicated to it. And my goal is to, just like a book, I'll pick up music I've never seen before, and I probably will never see it again. I might, but it's like, I just want to read music like people read a magazine. Among a couple other things, some family or walking and things like that. But if I get that done every day, last Friday, it was before work in the morning on my electric piano, but usually it's on my piano in the other room. If it's 11:30 at night, I will do that. I will not miss a weekday doing that because I picture my future self thanking me. I picture my retired self thanking me. It's just a fascinating thing. And it's like the whole world could go to pot But if I get my piano practice in for that day, it's like somehow I'm beating the world out and I'm moving forward somehow.
I would love to hear more about that at some point in time. What you're actually doing, sight reading, music, piano, because I've thought about that in my 60s. I would love to learn to play the piano, and I just think it'd be something I would enjoy doing. And I don't know if I want to sit down and take lessons for 10 years to do it. But that is fascinating to me. I'd love to learn about that at some point in time.
Absolutely.
But the other piece of that you did mention that's fascinating is when I look at my life, I'm pretty confident what I would go back and tell the Shane from 25 years ago. I know the advice I would give him. But what I've really been thinking of recently is, what would the 75-year-old Shane come back and tell me? And I'm fairly confident he would tell me, take care of your health. He would say, don't neglect your family. Make good decisions with your money. While you still feel good, travel and experience as much as you can. Learn some new hobbies, find purpose. I sense what I think he would tell me. So I'm trying to follow that future self advice.
My parents and in-laws, 3 out of the 4 at like 70, that was it for them. They lived a little bit longer, but no more travels after that, nothing. I just talked to the neighbor yesterday, and they just retired, and they say there's a go stage, a slow stage, and a no stage or something like that as you retire. If you're starting things at 65 or so, at least from my history of my family, you got about 5 years doing the stuff you're talking about, going to Hawaii and things like that before your bladder can't handle it or something like that. There's not much time in that time that people think that there's going to be that time.
Yeah, I read a book years ago, and I can't recall the name of it, that talked about trying to decide all the things in life that you really would like to do, the places you want to go, the hobbies you want to do, the things that are left, and to break them into 5-year windows. Because there's things I can do between 55 and 60 that I can't do between 75 and 80, but to try and to break, okay, between these 5 years I'm doing this, these 5 years I'm doing this, just to try to, once again, put your life in order as far as what you're going to focus on moving forward. But we shall see, my friend. We shall see.
Shane, speaking about the future, is there anything that you would take on if the opportunity was there? And I'll throw some things out. Governor, the stuff we're talking about now, being on stages across the world and stuff. Is that stuff like, I don't want to do it. If it happened, it'd be cool. I kind of want to do it. Where do you sit on some of those? I don't want to say bigger things because they're not bigger for some people. For some people, it's less. But where do you sit on some of those things?
Well, for one thing, today I have no margin to consider anything else. I don't want to write a book because if people started reading it and they actually wanted me to come speak about it, I would not have any time to go speak. I have so little time to do a number of new things, but I might at some point. Things like governor, politics has changed. Politics is gotten to be very different in Tennessee and throughout the country. And it's gotten to be a lot more mean-spirited. And the way people get elected nowadays is you have to run farther and farther to the right or to the left to get elected. And you have to pander to extreme bases on both sides. And if you're not angry and you're not throwing out red meat to people on the far left or the far right on either sides, you can't win. So you take the governor of the state of Tennessee. Do I think I could be a governor? Sure. I'm naturally wired as an administrator, or more so than I am as a legislator, but I'm not sure I'm electable. Even if I had the time, even if I sold my business and had plenty of time and plenty of money, I'm not completely sure I'm electable because I'm not going to become that far. I'm a Republican, but if I was a Republican or a Democrat, but I'm a Republican, I'm not sure I'm willing to run as hard and as far to the right that's necessary. The things I care about probably aren't sexy enough to help me get elected. The things that really matter to people are things like education and healthcare and infrastructure and public safety and jobs. I'm not going to run for office, and the only thing I want to talk about is that we need to go build the wall. I mean, okay, can't build a wall. We're in Tennessee. But to some extent, you have to be reasonable about what you can or can't do. But I think I would enjoy being governor, and I think I can make a real difference for Tennessee as governor. I just don't think I'm electable.
I had a customer who ran for the congressional seat in the state for state government, and he just couldn't believe how just nasty it got so quickly. You had pretty big guns worrying or being concerned about his seat more than maybe I thought it would be. And he said it was just ugly, just so ugly. And this is like trying to represent the state congressional office. It's worse as it gets higher, but he said never again. He lost, and he said never again.
So I would say two things. Number one is, if you have anyone out there who is seriously considering running for office, especially if they're a pharmacist or someone who wants to get into office and they want to get some real life experience about it, email me, call me. I want to see pharmacists. I want to see people who are healthcare minded, people who want to get involved. So contact me. I'll make time. We'll find a Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But the second aspect of this is, whoever it is, do not underestimate how incredibly difficult running for office is. It is nasty, my friend. People, when they're running for office, they will get negative and they will attack you, and they'll attack your family, and they'll attack your background and your business and your history and everything about you. So you better get ready for somebody to just bludgeon you. And then once you've gotten elected, as you vote on issues, it only gets worse. And of course, social media and mainstream media, all those things have just made it even harder. A number of people that I always joke around that at any given time, 50% of Tennessee hates me for no good reason. I'm the same. But I use social media as a means to just communicate things I'm doing. I do not get in these crazy merry-go-rounds with people that just want to just hate on me. If they want to meet with me, you can schedule a time on Tennessee Thursdays. That's what I do. But politics is nasty. So if somebody's going to run, you better be ready for it. But we need good people to continue to stay involved and motivated and interested, because our state of Tennessee, the state of Michigan, we need good people running for office. We need them.
My son tells this to me. Sometimes you get people, they're so against one side. And he says, look, it's one vote. If someone doesn't like what you're doing, that 50%, they don't have to hate you. They go in on the Tuesday and they pick one vote. Shane, let me see if I have this right. And you alluded to it, and I tell it to everybody. I don't know if it's right or not, but it makes sense to me. You remember back in the day, the Gerald Ford days and things, and these guys would fight all day in Congress, and they would basically leave at night and maybe go get a drink together, that kind of stuff. At least that's what I was told. And then, whether you were on the left or the right, I heard it said that people, in reality, if you walk out with someone on the other side, you're basically going to treat someone on the street the same way. You're both going to try to lift them up, maybe give them a little bit of bite for lunch, help them out, this kind of thing. Now, there's a lot of different visions, but when reality hits, we're humans and we care for people and things like that. My theory, and it's not mine, but my thought is that with social media, people can't come together at the end of the day. In other words, whether they're a politician or not, or just reading the news, they've read something, and instead of going back to their family maybe and neighbors and talking over things they might not agree on, they're going into their camps, their Facebook camps and Twitter camps, and now they're getting it from 5 p.m. till midnight, and they're getting more entrenched. And it just seems that you never have this meeting in the middle that real life brings about. Is that close?
I don't think I could say it a lot better than that. I think there is 10% on both sides. And that 10% groups, they are very small, but they are so loud. And they're so angry. And they're so motivated that when you decide to run for office, it's that 10% on one side or the other that will attack you relentlessly. I believe that 80% of people are somewhere in the middle, a little right of center, little left of center. And the truth is, everybody kind of wants the same things across the board. You can take Democratic issues, which are typically, if you're talking about immigration or education or social services or environment. Well, there's a lot of Republicans care about that too. You come over and you look at typical Republican issues, if it might be things about small government and a strong military. There's a lot of Democrats care about those things too. We're not that far apart, but these folks on the extreme ultimately impact elections. And since they impact elections when people are running, those groups are, and I could give you examples of some of those. I hate to say them here on your show, but those organized groups on these extremes that will put everything they have around money to beat you because of one vote. I can have one vote. This coming Thursday night, I'm speaking to a group of young Republicans here in my community. There's probably 100 of them coming out. And one of the things I'm going to do with this group when they're in there is I'm going to hand out ahead of time a list of 20 issues. And I'm going to have them rank on a scale of 1 to 10 how strongly they feel about those issues. If you feel incredibly strong about an issue, low taxes, you make it a 10. If it's something that you don't really care all that much about and it's an issue of immigration, it's a 3. And at the very end, I'm going to have them add up their score. So 20 issues, you can get a 10. The max you can get would be 200. So I'm going to say I want everybody in the room that has 150 or up to please stand. Well, I guarantee I'll have 20 or 30 people stand up. And I said, so everybody else that's sitting down in the room, you're a rhino, which is basically you're Republican in name only, serious Republican because you're sitting down. And then I'll say, see how ridiculous that is? Just because these people are just a little bit more committed on these issues than you are, you're going to attack the rest of us. And we have to be able to sit down and dialogue and recognize that my wife and I don't agree on these 20 issues.
Exactly.
We just don't. So can we not find a handful of things we agree on? Let's build on it. But we really have a lack of civility. There's a decay of civility in our society. And you see it everywhere nowadays. Just turn on the news for 15 minutes and it's everywhere you look.
Shane, when I was a kid, there were 2 types of people, according to my mom. There was people that I knew from the neighborhood and church and sports coaches and things like that. That was one side. The other side was hippies. And so if someone had a little bit longer hair, probably shorter than some of my sons do, they were hippies. But here's what I thought about the hippies all those years. The hippies, they became pretty fascinating to me because they were people that were at colleges and they shared their mind and they were liberal thoughts, opening those up, things like that. Boy, it seemed like to me, now maybe I haven't been following closely enough, but it seemed like that changed overnight because I watch some shows now where you get some talking head who's visiting at a campus and maybe they're trying to razzle things up a little bit, but it seems like at least they're having a conversation that is conversing, not agreeing, but conversing. But some of these, what I used to call hippies, they're screaming at the top of their lungs, not a comment against the views, but a comment to shut them up. Your thoughts are not welcome here. And I heard it a few weeks ago. The guy said, hey, if you're no longer talking, then you're going to be fighting because at least talking, you're doing it with your mouth instead of your arms and things. But boy, it just threw me that back in the day, the hippies were the people that accepted every thought. And now it seems just the opposite to me.
I just don't know how we've gotten here. But we have so little discourse and the ability to communicate and solve problems. And Tennessee in Michigan are microcosms of mine and your world. But in Washington, D.C., the differences, the divide between those groups are so massive that everything's about political points, 100% of it. And so to truly try to solve some of the enormous issues we have in this country, and we do enormous issues, I just don't see it happening anytime soon. I really don't. And that's unfortunate because I feel like I can sit down with people, Democrats, independents, Republicans, libertarians. We can find something to agree on.
Yeah.
We just can. There's no reason to be mean-spirited.
Some of the social media, again, in the old days, to give of yourself, you had to start by obeying your parents and then having the lawn look good and then showing up for your Little League team and then going to school and pretty soon going to college and learning about these deeper issues and then maybe lending yourself to the communities, either as a business owner or someone in politics. And that's how you grew and helped these very complex issues, so complex. Now, though, it's just easier to spout off, and with your voice, you think you've become at the same level of other people, and you're not bringing anything to this complicated issue typically. And I'm not saying you have to stay quiet until you totally understand something, but to really get in there and push without lending to the complex issue just doesn't seem productive.
No, it's not. I speak to a number of elementary schools and middle schools and high schools with different groups, and I kind of have my typical, what does it mean to be a senator type of speech I give. But at the end of all of those talks, I'll always allow them to turn in little postcards with questions for me. So most of the time it's things like, do you have a bodyguard and do you have a private jet?
Yeah.
And the answers are no.
Yeah, right.
But occasionally I will get a question from a young person that is thought-provoking. So last fall, I had a young lady, I think she was in 8th grade, and she said, Senator Reeves, why don't Republicans care about poor people? And I said, wow. I said, we do care about poor people. And I said, and Democrats care about poor people. I just think we're coming at it from different angles. I just believe the best way to get out of poverty is for you to get a good education, and for you to get a job, and for you to wait till you get married, for you have children, and then for you to work your butt off for about 10 or 15 years. And when you're in your mid-30s, you'll be out of poverty. Now, you can also get out of poverty if the government's trying to help you over time and they're paying for housing and paying for your health care and paying for your education in those areas. So we do care about poor people. It's just we have different philosophies on how to get out of that along the way. So we as Republicans and Democrats ought to be able to talk about that together. Can the government help, and where can the private sector help, and where can we bring those two areas together? But it's very difficult. They're very difficult, my friend, very difficult.
To not listen to that and to make it evil when there's even an opposing view. And I've heard it, Shane, you said it and certainly alluded to it, but I've heard that you want to get in front of people, you got to be an angry politician. And that just kind of goes against what we're talking about here.
Well, again, that's why I'm probably not electable at a higher office. If I wanted to become a U.S. Senator, if I wanted to become a governor, it would be very challenging for me because that's not who I'm going to be to win. I'm not going to call people names, and I'm not going to scream, and I'm not going to try to make everybody afraid to get elected. I'm going to say, this is who I am. This is where I came from. These are things we need to work on, and here's how I think we ought to do it. But sometimes you can't win elections doing that.
Yeah. I always kind of thought it'd be fun to be a politician when I was a kid just for the notoriety. But then I realized that my views were too, I'm not saying they were right, but they were too one-sided. You really have to open up to be a politician. And I know you're not getting it. You're saying you really have to be nasty at those other levels.
Yeah, you have to play to that 10% crowd. Because that 10% crowd are the loud ones that are mobilized, that are going to spend money to beat you. The people in the middle, they're not super engaged until you get right up to election time. So I put a palm card and it comes in the mail to your house, and I talk about, well, these are the things I did to try to make a difference in the certificate of need laws in Tennessee. People know what certificate of need means. They're interested in those red meat issues, and I'm going to go vote for this guy.
Remember, Jay Leno did a thing where he'd walk up with all of the talking points from the one side of the aisle that they agree with and say that it was from the leader of the other side of the aisle, and people wouldn't agree with anything. They'd say those are terrible policies. So it's just too much. The optics are too strong, I think, than the reality. Well, Shane, golly, there's so many things you're doing with your 300 and so many employees and your 12-stone business, your political endeavors. But I feel we've talked about the most important stuff, because I'm a firm believer that if you don't get things organized, one, you can't do the things you want to do, and two, your mind is so flustered, there's no room to dream about being in politics or running a business and things like that, and the family stuff you want to do. So thanks for spending that kind of time on this, getting the tools together in order to shape your future. So very fascinating.
Thank you. I could spend 1 week with anybody that's listening to this podcast. And if I could watch where they spend their time, where they spend their mind, where they spend their money, and who are their key relationships 1 week, and I can give you a pretty good sense of what their life's going to look like in 3 to 5 years, because it puts you on a path, and that's where you go. Everything worth doing is hard until it's not. And it eventually does not become easy if you have the systems in place to keep the momentum going. But I'm delighted to be on your show today, and I hope this adds some value to somebody out there.
Well, Shane, you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking time out to speak to us. I look forward to keeping in touch.
Great. Thank you. Blessings.
You've been listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Koelzer. Please subscribe for all future episodes.